Now, Hannity, the Singaporeans are wondering, like, you are such a good tipper over there. They're wondering, when are you coming back? I mean,
some were surprised.
Like, drops down the Benjamins for the doorman.
A lot of people like, no, sir, we included some in the. I'm like, yeah, but you only include 10%. So there's some truth to that.
Yeah. No, Hannity is a very big tipper. I can attest to that, and he puts all the big liberal hotshots to shame. So, Sean, I'm so happy you got back safely. Fantastic show tonight.
Remember, I am a dishwasher. I'm a former dishwasher.
Okay.
And everything else.
All right, got it. Good evening. All right, good evening from L.A. I'm Laura Ingraham, and this is the Ingraham Angle. We're just over 100 miles from the border where a crisis is raging, and tonight we're going to bring you the inside story on the red-hot topic that everybody's talking about. Most people are getting it wrong, of course. Attorney General Jeff Sessions is here exclusively to respond to the controversy surrounding illegal immigrant kids separated from their parents. Plus, Ben Shapiro tells us how Democrats are really the ones exploiting the children as political pawns in this battle over immigration. Also, senators grill the inspector general for what some are saying whitewashing rampant bias at the top of the FBI against the president. And why would the Washington Post, by the way, run a story that blows up the Russian collusion narrative? Roger Stone tells us why. But first, faux liberal outrage in the destruction of the rule of law. That's the focus of tonight's angle. Every country has an obligation to protect its borders and its citizens, particularly one as expansive and as generous as the United States. Now, for too long, immigration law was ignored, frankly, and basically unenforced. Obama tried to kind of enforce it in an ad hoc fashion, but his policies, which I'm going to get to in a moment, only ended up exacerbating our problems at the border. So today we have a full-on crisis. 160% increase in the number of people illegally entering the United States from just last year. Well, the president is responding with a zero-tolerance message, which he reiterated today.
The United States will not be a migrant camp, and it will not be a refugee-holding facility. Won't be. You look at what's happening in Europe, you look at what's happening in other places. We can't allow that to happen to the United States, not on my watch.
Now, the president is now doing what we should have been doing all along, prosecuting all border crashers. So if you enter the country illegally, you're breaking the law. The United States is not an open repatriation center where any indigent person in the world feels free to just walk in and assume that all of us will take care of all of them and their families. There's a process, and it has to be respected. Homeland Security Chief Kirstjen Nielsen said this today.
We are a compassionate country that has taken in millions of refugees. Since 1975, the United States has welcomed more than 3 million refugees from all over the world, and each year typically admits nearly 2/3 of the world's settled refugees. That is more than all other countries combined. We will not apologize for the job we do or for the job law enforcement does for doing the job that the American people expect us to do. Illegal actions have and must have consequences. No more free passes, no more get-out-of-jail-free cards.
Well, consistent with American law, when a party is arrested, your children are either sent to relatives or they become wards of the state. So since more illegal immigrants are rushing the border, more kids are being separated from their parents and temporarily housed in what are essentially summer camps, or as the San Diego Union Tribune described them today, as looking like basically boarding schools. Having lost the argument and, frankly, the last election, liberals have seized on the separated children and turned the entire image into a political weapon, attempting to emotionally manipulate the public perception of immigration enforcement.
Doctor, I've read that you have said that the separation, in your words, you said, is nothing less than government-sanctioned child abuse. Do you really think that this amounts to child abuse?
This does amount to child abuse.
And all I can say after talking to the people, watching the people, listening to the people, that the Statue of Liberty, I think, is weeping right now.
They've effectively orphaned thousands of children taken from their parents.
I'm heartbroken by what's happening, and I wonder what this means about the fabric of our country.
Now, why are all their hearts breaking in unison now? Why no tears for the victims of illegal immigrant crime, like the 14-year-old girl raped by Anastasio Eugenio Lopez Fabian just last month? Or did their heart break when another 14-year-old was left to die at the scene of a hit and run by Miguel Ibarra Cerda, a 21-year-old Mexican national? My friends, here's what you're not hearing. The government has very good reasons for separating these children from their family unit. The first being, they may not be the child's family at all. Children have been kidnapped, trafficked, and used by individuals who can then more easily slip into the country. The Obama administration's catch and release policy allowed people with children to enter the United States with only a promise to show up for a later hearing. A lot of them didn't show up, of course. The human traffickers and the drug cartels quickly seized on the weakness and exploited it, routinely trafficking people across the border using children at times as camouflage. Then, when Obama announced his DACA policy in 2012, it became yet another lure for illegal immigrants. The number of unaccompanied minors from El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras surged between 2012 and 2014, check this out, by more than 400%. The number of unaccompanied children referred to the Office of Refugee Resettlement tripled between 2012 and 2017, from 13,625 to 40,810, according to the government statistics. From these immigrants come fresh recruits for MS-13 and other gangs that terrorize American cities from Maryland to California. We've talked to the officials who told us the stories. And in June of 2014, even the Washington Post had to admit that the unaccompanied minor surge was, quote, driven in large part by the perception that they will be allowed to stay under the Obama administration's immigration policies. Astoundingly, in the fiscal year 2014, the Border Patrol apprehended 68,445, quote, family units. Few, of course, were deported. Now, you throw in sanctuary cities, a lax amnesty program, and it's a wonder more illegals haven't come. So the Trump administration is now trying to pick up the pieces of this lawless immigration system after decades of governmental neglect. They're also trying to responsibly protect children in the government's care. Here are the circumstances under which they temporarily take custody of children. Number one, when DHS is unable to verify the relationship between the adult and the child. Number two, when DHS determines that a child may be at risk with the parent or the legal guardian. And three, when the parent or legal guardian is referred for criminal prosecution. Now, you enter into a normal port of entry rather than coming across the border illegally, and the chances are you're not going to be separated from your families. But most of these people are coming straight across the border as illegal immigrants, then claiming some type of status or asylum request. And this all goes back to a 1997 court ruling we've talked about before on the show called the Flores Settlement, which forbade the government from holding unaccompanied children for more than 20 days. Ditto for those traveling with family units. So unless you have a hearing within 20 days, they have to be released into the country. It's okay, unless you be swayed by the media reports that the children are housed in concentration camps or cages. The truth is the U.S. taxpayer is spending a lot on the care of these children, nearly $35,000 per year per child. They actually have a higher standard of living than the 13 million American children today currently living below the poverty line. It's about $24,000 per household. And as for the conditions of the facilities that the immigrant children are housed in, they live a lot better than some inner city kids, or say the 11,472 homeless veterans living here in California.
Anything we've seen the government has provided, this doesn't feel like we're in the United States.
Department of Health and Human Services invited us inside because I think they wanted to show us, relatively speaking, how good the conditions are, I guess you could say. I mean, there are licensed professionals in there that are taking care of the children. There are not cages. There are not fences.
It's just ridiculous. I mean, the bottom line is these kids should be united with their parents, for sure, reunited with their parents back in their home countries. They should not be burdens to the United States taxpayer or thrown into a system of foster care by parents who think coming across the border with children will just assure them eventual legalized status. The president wants the separation to end as well.
President Trump has said this lawlessness cannot continue. We do not want to separate parents from their children. You can be sure of that. If we build a wall, we pass some legislation, we close some loopholes, we won't face these terrible choices.
And rather than trying to score political points, Democrats and Republicans, like Sessions is indicating, should come together. They should do what's best for the country, for the American citizen and the American workers and these immigrant children. The law should be changed so that the Border Patrol can turn away individuals and family units at the border if necessary. Today, only Mexicans who cross the border illegally can be turned back. That's absurd. Our Border Patrol doesn't exist as a wave-in facilitator for any group of supposed family members who mouth the script given to them by lawyers, non-governmental institutions, or other people in their home countries that they mouth for asylum. The American people are footing a really big bill for what is tantamount to a slow-rolling invasion of the United States. And we can no longer permit Central American countries to export their poverty and their desperation to our nation. Our own children, black, white, Asian, and Latino, need help too. In Detroit, here in LA, in Hartford, in Miami, and in Chicago. So why don't the Bushes and the Obamas and all these left-wing reporters emoting today at the White House and all these pro-amnesty Democrats and Republicans, why don't they ever write op-eds or cry for those kids? You know why? Because they think this over-the-top coverage and the misrepresentation of what's going on will hurt the man that they could not beat in November 2016, Donald Trump. And that's the angle. Joining us now for a reaction is Art Del Cueto, president of the Border Patrol Union in Tucson and radio talk show host. Here with me in the studio in L.A., Ethan Bierman. All right, Ethan, you heard what I just said. Throw it at me. Where did I get it wrong?
Well, I would say this. There are a lot of different issues that you addressed there. First off, we have the overarching issue that we've never addressed immigration overall and how we deal with people who are in this country. But most importantly, we've got to get to the root issue that we're talking about today, which is separating children from their families. Yes, the president does have the power right this very minute with a 5-minute phone call to say, stop doing this. Let's keep them together until we resolve the asylum issue, the immigration issue.
Now, that's what that was said and resaid and restated today. Let's say the president called up HHS or Border Patrol and said, okay, kids stay with the parents. They can all stay in this summer camp kind of facility, and there are several of them nearby where we are, 100 miles. Then they have to be released in 20 days. So you're going to go to the American people who are already burdened with taxes, overcrowded classrooms, all the stuff that kids in this city of LA are dealing with, and you're saying to them, okay, the thousands upon thousands of family units crossing the border should all be then released into the country. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, because we're short on immigration judges right now.
Okay, so I just want to know that you're saying that that's okay, because you know then, Ethan, they never come back for their hearings. You know, the lion's share of people abscond, and then later on they say, we want amnesty.
Yeah, but don't separate the families the way you're separating them right now, or the way the president and the Border Patrol and Customs and Immigration are doing this. Are criminals
separated from children?
After in felony cases, so this is a misdemeanor to cross in the United States illegally. So if you get pulled over,
does it mean anything?
If you get, of course it means something, which means we need to fix our immigration system.
Okay,
which means these people are coming here because our employers are hiring them. There are jobs waiting for them. Jobs that Americans are fully employed.
Let me tell you about some of the jobs that are being done by the illegal labor. And Art, I want you to chime in on this. This is a story that is still being litigated. In December of this past year, 2017, a federal grand jury in Ohio handed down a 5th indictment in a child labor, human trafficking case where they had underage children under the age of 18, some as young as 14, who were brought up from Central America to work in this egg farm. Now, this is not an isolated incident, by the way, but they were trafficking these kids up since 2012 when President Obama pushed DACA through. And so there are jobs. Yeah, there are a lot of jobs that unscrupulous businesses want to pay kids to do child labor. That's the kind of thing that will be stopped if we have a zero tolerance policy at the border. These countries exporting their own desperation are shameless, but Art, the images are bad. I mean, Ethan's saying, look, these images, look, these are terrible. That's not who we are as a country. We want families to be together. We're all for families. We love families. So how is this good for the Trump administration and the rule of law? These are the images that the press is focused on.
The reality, Laura, is during the Obama administration, the kids that were taken away from their families were pretty much put in bird cages. That's what they were. They are being held in better facilities similar to boarding schools. So they're much better facilities than what they were held during the past administration. Now, I understand people are arguing that we're separating these kids and you can bring up during felonies or non-felony crimes. The reality is what we see day in, day out. No one's going to tell me we're not doing the right thing when we chase a group through the desert that are bringing their child, a minor, through this desert. And when they see Border Patrol agents show up, they drop their child and they run. They literally drop these kids. They just drop them on the ground. So you're going to tell me these are good people, these are good parents, they need to be with their kids? They're exposing their kids to criminal element. We've seen many, many times where these individuals grab their children, they put them in the trunk of a car, they hand them over to coyotes, they hand them over to smugglers, people that obviously have some kind of criminal record, and they either walk through the desert or they go through a different car. Anybody in the United States, as a parent, that should be sickened by those things. I would never hand over any of my children to somebody with a criminal past, much less allow them to put them in the trunk of a car to come through the desert.
I think that people think that it's always parents, just parents who've come all the way from El Salvador are just walking up to the border. A lot of the times the kids are coming up to the border and they're hooking up with adults on the way because they know as long as I'm a child and I'm with an adult before the family unit, like Ethan wants, could stay for a while, 20 days, or they get released into society. That's why they're coming with children, because they can get a fast pass to release. Now, Ethan, I want to play for you Obama and Hillary both responding to the other big border crisis, which was in 2014, what they said about the unaccompanied minors. Let's watch.
We have to send a clear message. Just because your child gets across the border, that doesn't mean the child gets to stay.
Our message absolutely is don't send your children unaccompanied on trains or through a bunch of smugglers. That is our direct message to the families in Central America. Do not send your children to the borders. If they do make it, they'll get sent back.
Guess what? They weren't sent back. Almost none of them were sent back. And they heard that, perhaps, even though they weren't sent back. And so people came with their children.
Right.
Is this good?
People coming
They said the kids were going to go back. They never went back. Now they're taxpayer burdens, almost all of them.
Oh, and a lot of them are actually now productive members of our society.
Oh, really?
As well.
From 2014? They're like 13 years old. They're productive members. What are you talking about? They're in public schools.
How many DACA recipients do you know? Some of them have become very successful members of our community.
These aren't DACA recipients. These are people just from a couple of years ago.
And they'll become successful.
They're always valedictorians in your eyes.
Not always, but many of them are productive in many different ways. But this is why we want to keep families together. They're fleeing desperate situations. We are so blessed and fortunate in this country that we don't experience that on a day-to-day basis. So we want to keep them together.
Well, you might not experience on a day-to-day basis, but there are a lot of Americans, 13.2 million children, living below the poverty line, 18 or younger, 24,000 per household. These kids, $34,000 a year. That's what it costs the American taxpayers to take care of them. Those facilities are a lot nicer than the way some of these kids are living in inner city America today. And I don't think that should ever be allowed to happen. It's great to have you on, Ethan. It's always great to see you when I'm in town. And by the way, do you want to know the truth about the administration's policy on kids crossing the border? Well, stay right there. My exclusive interview with Attorney General Jeff Sessions. Going to ask him the tough questions coming up.
Looks like you're not sleeping well.
How did you know? And Megan!
Democrats have launched a blitz accusing the Trump administration of separating children from their parents and housing them in literally concentration camps along the border. Leftist politicians, from senators to Hillary Clinton, took their best shots.
It is unacceptable in my mind, I think in the minds and hearts of any American, that someone can justify a policy of deliberate harm to children as a way to gain legislative leverage.
In fact, what he's doing is holding these kids and their parents hostage to a whole set of other immigration issues.
Separating families is not mandated by law at all. That is an outright lie. And it's incumbent on all of us, journalists and citizens alike, to call it just that.
Okay, well, she should know something about lying, right? With emotions running this hot. So is this a PR battle the administration can win? Let's discuss all this with the head of the Justice Department. We are pleased to welcome Attorney General Jeff Sessions. First time on the Ingraham angle. General Sessions, thank you so much for being with us. There's a lot to get to tonight, but you heard what Mrs. Clinton said, that this is a lie. This is not caused by the Obama administration. This doesn't have to be done. The president could pick up the phone tonight and stop this policy of separating children from their parents. What's the real truth there, General Sessions?
Well, I guess what she's saying is the president could just issue a directive that everybody that enters the country unlawfully be released into the country and never be apprehended or stopped or prosecuted for the illegal entry. We have watched what happened with the Obama policies, and over the years we went from 15,000 illegal entries to 75,000. This is a huge loophole in our system that's attracting more and more people as more and more people understand that under the previous policies, if they were entered the country unlawfully, nothing ever happened. We're doing the right thing. We're taking care of these children. They are not being abused. The Health and Human Services holds them in good conditions. They work hard at it. We spent $1 billion last year, Health and Human Services did, in taking care of children who've entered the country unlawfully. And Laura, one more thing, the vast majority of those children still tend to be the unaccompanied minors, but we've had a big surge in families bringing children or some adults bringing children with them.
Yeah, one of the shelters not too far from the border has 90% of the kids were unaccompanied minors, 10% were separated from their families. Just so my viewers understand this, General Sessions, what happens when a family unit, you see them all on the bridges, which I think is just absurd, that they just stay on the bridges near the ports of entry near San Diego. Now, when they get processed in, and it's slow, they get processed in, and it's a woman says, this is my child or two children, then what happens? Are they separated if they claim asylum? Say, I want to claim asylum. What happens to the mother and the children at that point?
If they enter the country at a port of entry, and there are many of those along the border, they are not violating the law. The mother or father in that circumstance would not be prosecuted, and the families stay together. They're presumably they're claiming an asylum, and they would not be prosecuted and not be separated. But if they go out in the desert, they cross a fence or a barrier, our officers have to identify them, follow them, apprehend them. They're violating the law, and they need to be prosecuted for that. We simply cannot condone that kind of activity. We want to end this process of children being brought across dangerous territory, placing those children at risk. If they want to claim asylum, let them go through the port of entry. That's the way it should be done.
Yeah, I think most people aren't understanding this. I think most people think that if you come even through one of the, 25 ports of entry, you have your family separated. That's not how it's working. It's a rare circumstance when I think the Border Patrol people know that this person is not related to this other person, and they can figure it out pretty quickly in those circumstances. But I just think it was important to have the people understand that. This is how your opponents, General Sessions, are demagoguing this issue. Let's listen.
I walked down that railroad siding where the families were separated, and that's why I used that picture. Now look, I know we're not Nazi Germany, all right, but there is a commonality there.
This is the United States of America. It isn't Nazi Germany, and there's a difference. And we don't take children from their parents until now.
Nazi Germany, concentration camps, human rights violations. Laura Bush has weighed in, Michelle Obama, Rosalind Carter, got all the first ladies, going back to Eleanor Roosevelt. She's apparently weighed in as well. General Sessions, what's going on here?
Well, it's a real exaggeration. Of course, in Nazi Germany, they were keeping the Jews from leaving the country. But this is a serious matter. We need to think it through, be rational and thoughtful about it. We want to allow asylum for people who qualify for it, but people who want economic migration for their personal financial benefit and what they think is their family's benefit is not a basis for a claim of asylum. But they can make that claim. We will process it and review the situation and make a decision. Those children, if the parent brings them across the border in an unlawful area and the parent is deported, they will take the children home with them. That is true. If the parent claims asylum and is allowed to stay here, then the children stay here also and be kept in Health and Human Services custody.
Yeah. General Sessions, is this policy in part used as a deterrent? Are you trying to deter people from bringing children or minors across this dangerous journey? Is that part of what the separation is about?
Fundamentally, we're enforcing the law. If you break into the country in an unlawful...
But is it a deterrent, sir?
Well,
Are you considering this a deterrent?
I see that the fact that no one was being prosecuted for this as a factor in a 5-fold increase in 4 years in this kind of illegal immigration. So, yes, hopefully people will get the message and come through the border at the port of entry and not break across the border unlawfully.
And let me get your quick thoughts, sir, if you would, on this looming showdown with congressional investigators. They're trying to get those documents, as you know, from your department. And Trey Gowdy, oversight chair, he said yesterday that officials will be held in contempt of Congress if the DOJ and FBI do not comply with the subpoenas. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, we've gone a long way in dealing with that. The FBI has worked hard on it, I think. An agreement was signed with Mr. Gowdy and Chairman Goodlatte, both chairmen, to have 12 of their staffers at the Department of Justice, at the FBI, looking at these records. And so I think that's moving along pretty well. Hopefully there's no problems
they're out of patience. General Sessions, I hate to interrupt you. They're out of patience. They feel like they've been asking for these documents. Some of these documents end up showing up with the IG report that Congress asked for months and months and months ago. So you can't, I mean, you were in Congress. You know what it's like to try to do oversight. It's really frustrating. And they're going to hold Rosenstein in contempt. I mean, they're going to hold him in contempt of Congress. Then what?
Well, we have a responsibility to respond to Congress. We intend to be responsive to Congress. If we're running behind in production, we'll take efforts to step it up. And we have a responsibility to produce the documents that are properly disclosable. And we intend to do so. That's my direction to the department.
Senator Sessions, Attorney General Sessions, just one more question. Are you involved at all in discussions about a possible recusal of Rod Rosenstein from overseeing Mueller, given the fact that he did sign one of those FISA warrants? It's a big, there's a big controversy in this case.
I am not involved in that. He is the acting Attorney General for that matter, and he has to make his own decision as I had to make my decision.
Got it. Got it. General Sessions, thank you so much for spending time with us tonight. Such important issues at the border. We really appreciate it. And we'll talk to you soon. And today, by the way, on Capitol Hill, the FBI director got an earful over the double standard on the investigations into Hillary and Trump. That's not all. We're going to tell you why Jim Comey may be in serious hot water for his own private email use. Next.
Buying a new grill.
Senate Judiciary Chair Chuck Grassley wants investigators to find out if former FBI Chief Jim Comey discussed classified info in his personal emails. This was just one of the key developments in a hearing today over the Inspector General's report on the Clinton email investigation. DOJ Inspector General Mike Horowitz and FBI Chief Chris Wray testified, but Comey declined to appear. Let's discuss with Chris Hahn, former aide to Senator Chuck Schumer, and Matt Schlapp, chairman of the American Conservative Union, along with Peter Schweizer, author of the New York Times bestseller, Clinton Cash. All right, let's start with you, Peter. Haven't seen you for a while. What's your take on how this went down today with Horowitz appearing on Capitol Hill? It's amazing that Comey is, you see him on Twitter in Iowa cornfields, and he's at various national parks. but no time to come to Capitol Hill.
Comey's strategy on this is to hope that this is going to blow over, that it's going to go away, that Washington will forget about it. And I think the opposite has to happen. I think we have to think about it this way, Laura. Think about when we have cases of police misconduct or prosecutorial misconduct in the criminal realm. You know, a cop that's found having planted evidence or hiding evidence. We go and look at previous cases that police officer handled. We want to drill down and find out how bad the problem was. And I think we need to do the same thing here. So the IG report, as far as I'm concerned, is the beginning. It's not the end of this investigation.
All right, let's go to Chris Hahn. Chris, Senator Kennedy at one point he seemed just bemused by this idea that no bias was found in the report, and he was questioning Horowitz on this issue. Watch. I think we have the soundbite. If we don't have the soundbite, we have it, don't have it. He said, do you honestly believe that the American people are going to look at this report and believe that, look at those emails, that there was no bias, that people weren't acting on bias? And Horowitz essentially said, well, that's why we found out that it impacts the credibility of the handling of the investigation. We laid out all the facts here. So it was interesting when he said that, Chris, because he seemed to say, well, we laid out the facts and we said it affects the credibility, but they couldn't conclude that it affected the ultimate outcome of deciding to charge Mrs. Clinton or not. Kind of splitting hairs there, but he seemed to indicate, well, the bias was a factor in the credibility of the investigation.
Look, if anybody was biased against in 2016 by the FBI's action, it was Hillary Clinton and her campaign. And, you know, men will say just about anything they need to say in the middle of the night to try to impress a woman. And I think that's what was going on there. And whether or not that was evidence of bias, I don't know. I don't think Strzok should be involved with any investigations that touch the political system at all. But I think the results of 2016 were very clear. Nobody knew about the investigation going on into Russians meddling in the Trump campaign, and everybody knew about the Clinton email scandal, and that was what decided the election.
Matt Schlapp.
Yeah, I mean, please. So, look, it's very obvious in 2016 that Donald Trump is going to get the nomination, and then Lisa Page is emailing her boyfriend, Mr. Strzok, saying, oh, my God, what are we going to do? And he says, we're going to stop him. And we learned that 7 days before, he was put in charge of a counterintelligence investigation, this whole Russian Trump collusion thing. It was all done, Laura. It wasn't done to stop Russians from colluding in our investigation, in our election. It was all done to stop Trump. And that's why this message saying we'll stop him was removed, wasn't given to Congress, was removed from the servers. The IG had to find it through a special means using DOD technology to find this message. It is a smoking gun. It was to stop Trump.
Matt, please.
Peter Schweizer,
please,
hold on, Chris. Hold on. Let's get back to Peter. We'll get back to you in a second, Chris. So, Peter, you heard General Sessions on the show just now. He is not going to wade in much to the document dispute between Congress and the executive branch. But it is a whopper. When you have the Congress now they're about to hold DOJ in contempt of Congress. They're going to subpoena these documents. These things aren't turned over in short order. Then it's just another administration official, just like Eric Holder during Fast and Furious. He was held in contempt of Congress, and he goes down, I guess, as he's one of the great attorney generals of all time. I mean, it's insane.
Yeah, no, you're right, Laura. And look, the old adage in Washington, I think, is true. If you're hiding something, it's usually because you have something to hide. And that's what's so troubling. They have had to drag information out, whether it's from the FBI or DOJ, as it relates to the Hillary Clinton investigation, to the Russia investigation, you name it. They've had to drag it out of the DOJ and the FBI. Why is that? It's not simply because they're trying to protect sources. That stuff is redacted. It's taken away. It's deeply embarrassing to this institution. And by the way, the comment that the FBI was biased against Hillary Clinton is laughable. To have the FBI director stand up in front of the country and absolve Hillary Clinton of her crimes is not his role, is not his responsibility, and it was the FBI putting the seal of approval, essentially, on her conduct from a legal standpoint. That's unprecedented, in American history.
And
get Chris's response.
And the letter that they sent 11 days before the election reopening the investigation. That had nothing to do with any bias against Hillary Clinton.
Let me speak to the letter.
I gotcha.
Let me speak to the letter.
Look, and let me also let me go back to Matt's point.
Chris, let me get one point, then I get to talk.
One at a time, guys.
Oh, hold on a minute. Wait. I've been waiting for about 3 minutes. Let me go back to your point there, Matt. You're seizing on a very minute thing in that IG report. The IG report was very critical of Comey and the way he treated Clinton. It was critical of a lot of things. Strzok and Page were definitely doing things they shouldn't have been doing. But let me tell you, I'm sure all three of us have said things to a woman that we could not do to try to impress them. So we seem strong.
Would you stop saying that?
Chris, if this were, hold on, Matt. If this were happening to Hillary Clinton, we had two Trump people or two people burrowed in who despised the Clintons, were laughing at the Clintons behind, and then they said, oh, we're going to stop this. We need an insurance policy. You'd be going nuts. All the Democrats would be going nuts. You know why? Because it would be smart to go nuts. Because it's outrageous that our Justice Department can be used by individuals with a political animus to try to take down a candidate. That's wrong. I don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat, and I love you all, but that's just, we can't do that in our country. It kills our faith in these institutions. It really does. I don't care. Again, Republican, Democrat, can't do it. Matt Schlapp, close it out.
Yeah, real quickly, that's why the timing of when he said he'd stop it matters. That's when the Russian investigation started. And the reason why the Comey letter went out so close to the election day is because Comey was dragging his feet. It was the New York U.S. Attorney's Office for 30 days was pushing to get him to move, and he dragged his heels. And that's what's all throughout
he was
this
inappropriate
IG report
and biased towards Trump.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
All right, guys, we got to go.
God.
Fantastic panel by fantastic men, and not even in the studio with me. Thank you so much. And by the way, the Washington Post may have gotten its wires crossed. It actually ran a story showing how a Trump associate chose not to collude with the Russians. Roger Stone explains next. Okay, when the media haven't been freaking out about separating kids from their families and going into the shelters and calling them concentration camps, over the weekend, they were freaking out about what they thought was going to be another, nail in the coffin of Donald Trump. Another instance of Russian collusion. Whoops, except it wasn't. But let's watch.
Just, more questions about potentially another Russian having meetings, certainly with someone that's associated with the campaign.
Specifically, in this case, Roger Stone and Donald Trump being so close for so long raises additional questions about what the president, the now president, then candidate, may have known about these Russian contacts.
This was my 9th presidential campaign, and there's never been anything like this. The level of contact between one campaign and one foreign national that goes over and over again.
Okay, we're laughing here in the studio. Joining us to explain is the man himself, Roger Stone. Roger, I had to treat you with that montage because I'm watching it. Like, not one of them say the guy was an FBI informant. Not one of them. Tell us the real story.
It's extraordinary. In May of 2016, Michael Caputo, who appeared earlier with Sean Hannity, contacted me because a man using the name Henry Greenberg, turns out to be a paid FBI informant, said he had information that would be useful to the Trump campaign. He did not, in fact, promise in the run-up to this meeting dirt on Hillary Clinton, as reported by Shelby Holliday of the Wall Street Journal. Classic case of fake news. In any event, I reluctantly took this meeting, which lasted about 20 minutes. It turns out that Henry Greenberg is not his real name, that he is an FBI informant for over 17 years, was deported from the country in 2000, has a 10-year prison record for violent crime, is associated with Russian organized crime, but more importantly, is in the country on a visa sponsored by the Miami office of the FBI because he is providing, quote, a public benefit. He's an informant. At this very brief meeting, Mr. Greenberg, not his real name, the FBI informant, first shows up wearing a MAGA hat and a Trump T-shirt, shows me photographs on his phone of he and a woman at various Trump rallies, and then lays it on me that he has information damaging to Hillary Clinton, and he only wants $2 million for it. I reject his request for $2 million, and he laughs and says, it's not your money I want, it's Donald Trump's money. And there it is, giving up the game. This is an attempt to entrap me but to compromise Donald Trump. Even Greenberg, or whatever his real name, the Russian FBI
now, did he
informant,
speak like this,
tells
Roger?
the Washington Post that I reject his effort.
Yeah, but does he speak like this, Roger? Does he say, I have very good information on Hillary Clinton? I mean, is he speaking in the, like, Boris,
you sound more like,
of Rocky
you sound
the
more
Squirrel
like Boris
cartoons, or what?
Badenoff. You sound more like Boris Badenoff. The real question here is not why I didn't remember a meeting that happened.